If you're like me, the last time you touched your cyclocross bike was probably around Christmas time, right after Cyclocross National Championships. If it's been sitting in your garage the way mine's been sitting in my garage, there's a lot of work you need to do to the bike before you take it out for your first training ride. One thing I like to do is check all the bolts, make sure everything's tight. I'll go through the bike, lube the chain, lube the cables, make sure the bearings are free and the wheels spin easily. The crank bearings, they get a lot of muck in them during cyclocross, and so I like to check those things. Another thing I'll check is to make sure that the tires are glued on properly. Over the winter the tires can get dry rot, the glue can get dried up and becomes less sticky, so you want to make sure those tires are glued on tight. Lube the chain, make sure there's no rust on there, and just, you know, pretty much like you would do for any ride when the bike's been sitting for a while, you just go through it, make sure it's ready to go before you get out there on the road or the trail. You don't want to have any problems out there. So, you know, the tire treads are a lot different from the middle of the winter to generally the fall when it's a little bit drier. Now with the late summer, early fall, it tends to be dry. The trails are, you know, they're dusty if anything. Rarely do we encounter any mud until, you know, mid-November really. So I like to run a less aggressive tread pattern generally in the fall when the trails are firmer and dusty, versus when we get some mud I'll switch to a more aggressive tire like a Terra tire. Alright, so now you got your bike tuned up, and go through a couple things to get you ready for cyclocross. First thing I like to do is practice a few on and offs. I feel like dismounting at high speed puts a lot of pressure on your leading leg, and I know mine gets pretty sore the first few days of training, so I like to practice a few of those. Also like to do some motor pacing, get my leg speed up. In the early fall, late summer, the races are always fast, so you need a lot of leg speed and high intensity work. In addition to that, I like to do some running, just a little bit, switch up the training a little bit from mountain bike, and it gets those legs and those muscles used to the strains of cyclocross. And finally, I like to get out there on the mountain bike trails and kind of get my bike handling for the cyclocross bike dialed in. Spending the whole summer on the mountain bike, the feel and the handling of the bike is different, so getting used to the cyclocross bike before the races is great. Alright, so those are just a couple tips. Don't forget to stay hydrated out there. You know, cyclocross is traditionally a late fall, early winter sport, but it starts earlier each year, and staying hydrated, bringing a water bottle with you there for those first training rides is always a good idea.